You're listening to the Just Go Bike podcast. We're all about the culture of bicycling just for the fun of it. Your host, Kathy Murphy from the Morphology Podcast and Andrea Parrott from Parrott Talk are joined by a wide variety of guests each week that delve into the social side of cycling. With tales from RAGBRAI Nation, come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile. And now, here are your hosts, Murph.
Hey, that's me.
And AP.
And that's me. Hi, Murph.
Well, hey there, AP. What's new?
Well, we have an announcement to make. You and I are hosting bingo at Captain Roy's in next month, or as of this recording, next month, April 24th of 2024. So 42424.
42424. And Captain Roy's is located in Des Moines. And we need to put probably maybe a social media post about it or something so that anybody who's in the Des Moines area should come and cheer us on and maybe play some bingo.
Yeah, so if you haven't played bingo at Captain Roy's before, it's every Wednesday, and each week is a different host and a different fundraiser. And so obviously we're going to be the host on the 24th of April, and our fundraiser will be for the Iowa Bicycle Coalition. So all the funds that we raise selling bingo cards will go towards the Bike Coalition. So that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, we love it. We are excited for this. I've been practicing my bingo calling. How about you?
Oh, you know it. And actually, I did call bingo with Matt Phippen a couple of months ago around the route announcement time frame. And I'm known to throw a crazy bingo board in there once in a while. So,
ooh, okay.
Yeah. So just get ready.
Okay, this will be awesome. So 42424. Put it on your calendar to come to Captain Roy's.
Yeah, and so we'll have a few more details out on social media here once we release this podcast. So just go ahead and look at our Facebook page and you'll see all the info. Now that we've given ourselves a shout out, we have to give out another shout out to even more spectacular women in sports.
Oh my gosh, what a weekend.
Yes, in basketball and wrestling. The women's basketball team won the Big Ten championship, and boy, what a game.
Oh my gosh, went all the way into overtime, like on the edge of my seat. It was a great game.
I thought they were going to lose for sure about 3 separate times, and they really came through when it mattered, and it was just spectacular. But I also want to give a shout out to the 2024 National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships, as they won as well.
Yes, the Iowa Hawkeye women. Good job, everybody. I'm very proud to be an Iowan.
I'm proud to be a Hawkeye. I'm and an Iowan, but also a Hawkeye. And just cheering on, seeing other women excel in sports, it just makes me so proud. And just so happy for them and for the sports in general.
I agree, yes.
So speaking of women, March is Women's History Month.
Ooh.
So I think our next episode should be about women, history, and bikes.
Ooh, yes, that's a great idea. You could turn that into a Parrott Talk on that very subject. Okay, so in the meantime, I did a little research on women and the bicycle, and man, I am so glad I was not around way back in the day.
I know, right? Well, first of all, I would probably have died in childbirth, but for other reasons as well.
Well, so before we get to our episode, I wanted to just touch briefly on some women in history that are connected with the bicycle, and then we'll get to today's topic.
Yeah, and none of these people will be mentioned in the Parrott Talk episode, so this is like a little side bonus for you.
Okay, all right. So one famous female cyclist was the famous American sharpshooter, Annie Oakley.
Ooh.
And she was a huge fan of the bicycle, or she called it, or it was called at that time, the wheel.
Ooh,
which
the wheel.
Maybe we should bring that back.
We should definitely bring that back.
Yeah, your wheel looks really nice. Or I don't know how we would say it, I guess, but
nice wheel.
Anyway, known for her performances in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, Annie Oakley didn't just shoot riding horseback. She also taught herself to ride a bike without touching the handlebars in order to hit the targets.
Wow.
Pretty cool, I know. In 1892, this quote expressed her enthusiasm. "I am delighted with my wheel," she said. "I am equally as fond of it as my horse."
Think about it.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I had to steal your line there because it's a great quote. And what a cool fact from history.
Yeah.
I'll throw in the women's rights activist Susan B. Anthony, from famous for her own work and also the $1 gold coin.
Yep.
She said this: "Let me tell you what I think of bicycling. I think it's done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world. It gives women a feeling of freedom and self-reliance. I stand and rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a wheel. The picture of free, untrammeled womanhood."
Nice. And just think of what women wore back then, right? I mean,
Ugh.
here we are, when we go for a bike ride, we're in like spandex and, visible skin everywhere. Where back then, no spandex, no
Yeah.
showing of the skin. It had to have been quite a challenge to even ride with all of those layers and the tight, what do you call the things around your waist? A bodice? Or is that
Oh,
what they're
yeah.
called? Like,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
I'm so thankful to be untrammeled. I mean, seriously. So as women started dealing with the realities of trying to ride a bicycle in those Victorian dresses, they started to realize the limitations and the dangers of their clothing, which to modern women are obvious.
Right?
In the early Victorian era, New Yorker Amelia Jenks Bloomer invented a comfortable bifurcated garment similar to pants to be worn underneath dresses. It was inspired by the Turkish trousers worn by women in the Middle East, and Bloomer promoted the idea of her new bloomers as an alternative to hoops and petticoats. Her
Oh
invention
my gosh,
was
I didn't even think about hoops.
yeah,
Like if
yeah.
you had a hooped dress
Oh.
and then you're like, "Oh, I need to go to the grocery store in my bike," or
You
I
couldn't
guess there
even
wasn't
see.
a grocery store back then.
How would you see while riding with the
know.
hoops in front of you? Her invention was controversial, but after Bloomer's death in 1894, cycling women started stirring up even more controversy by wearing an updated version of the bloomer.
Aha, so there is the word bloomer.
Yeah, so thank you, Amelia.
I know. Wow. All right. Well, I cannot wait to hear your episode of whatever women in history that you talk about. But for now, let's get to this week's topic, which is going to be a very popular one.
That's right. We've got Coach Ertl on the episode this week to give us the lowdown on what we need to do to get ready for this year's RAGBRAI route. So he's going to help thousands of women and men get across those hills of RAGBRAI.
Yes. And we already know it's the hilliest route ever.
Yep.
And of course, Coach Ertl is the voice of reason. He knows what we need to be successful. We are going to be successful riders, and he's going to tell us about it right now.
All right, let's get to it. Coach Ertl.
We would love to welcome back to the show Coach Ertl. How's it going?
Going great.
Good. It's always nice to have you on this podcast. You are definitely one of our most popular episodes every year because, we try and post this when people are getting into training or maybe thinking about getting into training. So we feel like it's pretty good timing.
Yeah, and spring seems to be coming early, at least in this part of the country.
Yeah.
So I was out the other day and I couldn't believe all the bikes I saw out already.
I agree. It seems like maybe I don't know why this is a surprise every year, but it always seems really windy in early spring. But maybe it's like that every year and I just forget.
Remember, it's March winds, April showers, May flowers,
You're right.
July humidity, something like that.
Yeah. Well, we want to get into, kind of your suggestions and your thoughts on training for RAGBRAI 2024. But will you briefly tell the listeners a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I've been riding bikes all my life. I began racing in 1973 and have been doing it ever since. This is year 52. I got into coaching in 2001 just because of an interest in understanding more about training. And then I've been doing some coaching of both some teams as well as individuals ever since. And I've been writing the RAGBRAI training blog since 2009.
and Andrea and I both have mentioned this before, but all of those training plans are still available at the RAGBRAI.com website. So if you're, if whether you want to train all year round or just kind of see what Coach Ertl has done in the past, it's all there.
Yeah, and it gets more difficult every year to come up with new material because there's so much out there. But I try to put new spins on everything, but it's a great resource, and I'm glad you keep all those. And there's plenty of articles in there in the past that might be appropriate to look at this year.
Yeah, and you can actually print off Coach Ertl's plan and put it on your refrigerator or the mirror in the bathroom to kind of keep your motivation up. And that plan, here we are recording this in mid-March. That plan has already started, correct?
Yeah, but it's not too late to jump into it. You can either just jump into where you are this week, or you can go back to the beginning and start more gradually and just kind of ramp up a little faster. But you're only a month behind where the plan starts, so the mileage still isn't very high.
And I
At
think
this point,
AP and I have mentioned this several times in that it's just a guide. So it's not like
yes.
Coach Ertl says ride 12 miles and you must ride 12 miles. But it's definitely a guide. But if you're riding 0 miles, you're probably going to be in trouble come July.
Yeah, and I try to emphasize that it is mostly a mileage guide. There's two things about it that people need to look at. One is the total mileage for each week. Try to hit that. It doesn't matter how you distribute it through the week, although try not to do it all in one day.
Mm-hmm.
But the other number to look at is the distance of the longest ride each week, and try to hit that. It will progressively get longer, but not by very much. And so it may seem daunting to be able to do 70 miles, but if you increase the distance for your longest ride 5 miles a week, you'll be there before you know it.
Excellent. And, like I mentioned, we're in early March. And once July hits, we'll be riding our bikes 7 days in a row, well over 400 miles. And Matt Phippen has told us it's the steepest ride ever. So we definitely need your help, Coach Ertl.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily the steep, but it has the most elevation gain.
Okay.
But it's going to be southern Iowa, it didn't get flattened by the glaciers 10,000 years ago, so it's still hilly. It's not huge hills, but they're kind of constant.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen the elevation profile, but I bet it's going to look more like a sawtooth than a table. There'll be little ups and downs all the way across the state.
Mm-hmm.
So, you'll get tired riding it, especially late in the day when it's hot and windy and you're tired and there's still another hill to go up and over.
We've talked about Ride the Rockies on this podcast before, which is similar to RAGBRAI. It's a multi-day bike ride. But what's majorly different is that, let's say they're doing 70 miles in a day. Well, they'll have their climb all happen at once, and it will be a literal mountain, where here in Iowa, I call them rollers. I'm not sure what you call them, Coach, but they're lots of up and down. So you get a little bit of a break in between each hill, where in Colorado, it's all in one shot.
Yep, that's right. Rollers is a good term. And, if you've seen pictures of some of the previous RAGBRAIs, where it looks like a ribbon. The road just goes up and down and up and down. And they're not long, but in some cases, they may be steeper than the mountains are in Colorado.
Yeah.
Because the ones in Colorado, they're long, but they're more gradual. And some of the hills here can be steeper, but again, they're short. Most hills probably only take 3 to 5 minutes to get up and over.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're continuous. But you do get that break on the other side. For every up, there's a down.
And a lot of it, especially if you follow your training plan and riders are ready, then it becomes more of a mental challenge where you're like, oh my gosh, 17 more hills today. Your body can do it, but maybe your mind gets a little worn out.
Well, that's something I've written about in recent blogs. Is just that it's half mental. I'd say if you look at a hill and say, "Oh no, not another hill," you've already lost.
Mm,
And that's one of the reasons for training on hills, if you can, is to develop that confidence that you can do them.
mm-hmm.
You'll go slow, work harder, but you can get over them. And the more you do that, the more confidence you'll have that you can do them once you get to RAGBRAI.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's, at least you and I know this. I would say most listeners know this, but RAGBRAI is not a race. It's literally a ride or a tour.
Yeah, and it's the way to look at it this year is it's a personal challenge. It's more hilly. It's the hilliest RAGBRAI ever. So by facing that challenge and being prepared for it and doing it, you will have done quite an accomplishment
Mm-hmm.
by the time you get done with it. And that's something to strive for and feel good about when you get done. It's really a race against yourself in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just being able to complete it and do it well.
Yeah, that's great advice, and a great thought process to have. So, in 2024, I've said this a couple times, but we're in early March, and in theory, people should already have started training. But when we get to actually the week of RAGBRAI, how many training miles in general should riders try to have before they get to the river?
Well, as a good rule of thumb, I suggest you try to get 1,000 miles in,
Mm-hmm.
which may sound like a lot, but what are we, 4 months out?
Mm-hmm.
So 12 weeks, that's less than 100 miles a week on average. And that's kind of the distance of the ride each day. So um, I always encourage people to do more if they can and want to, but try to at least get that much in because part of it's just training your body to sit on a bike for that long.
Yeah.
And certain body parts in particular, like the ones that touch the bike, your feet, your hands, and your butt, need to get used to that, not just your legs.
Yeah, those touch points are definitely areas that give, well, I'll just speak for myself, like if I'm don't have the quite the right position on my bike, my fingers may go numb, my toes may go numb, and then of course your sit bones, get all that stuff,
Toughened up.
yeah, get all those areas toughened up for the big ride.
But there's also things like just your shoulders, your neck can get tired being in that position for long periods of time. So
Mm-hmm.
it is important to get out and do some long rides before you get to RAGBRAI. And part of it's just to test your equipment and your clothing to make sure everything feels good and is comfortable. And that's another reason for training is to get all those bugs worked out. You don't want to be trying out a new bike or a new pair of shorts when you hit that week in RAGBRAI.
Oh, for sure. Do you have any training tips for those riders who live in flat terrain areas?
Yes, I do. And I just the blog that came out yesterday talks about that. There's a number of things people can do when they don't have the luxury of having hills to ride.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one is to just substitute your gearing for hills. So if you live in an area where it's pretty flat, you can put it in your hardest gear and just kind of grind away as if you're climbing a hill.
Mm.
Headwinds help by adding more resistance. It's not quite the same, but I think you'll kind of get the same effect of getting used to pushing against greater resistance, even when it's flat. Um, if you do have some hill, maybe just one, you can get out and do it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You may feel kind of foolish, but you're on a mission. So, you know, use what you have. And then there's other things you can do too. You can go to the gym. You can do some leg strength work, such as leg presses, just to, you know, strengthen those leg muscles some to give them that kind of resistance that you're not going to get because you're not riding hills. Spin bikes are great. You can crank those down as hard as you want and use those to simulate hills. So yeah, go ahead and go to the RAGBRAI site, look up training under the ride tab, and read the article that went out there yesterday, March 11th.
And I was in Florida in the Keys a couple months ago, and it was extremely flat, except for all of the bridges.
Right.
So there was major elevation in those, on those bridges. So I can see that that would be a good training place. At least where I was, it was actually a bike lane. Just to, if you were to go up and down those a few times, you would have definitely gotten a workout.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, use whatever you've got. And if you don't have any hills, then you can simulate it using some of these other approaches.
Any ideas on how to simulate the heat and the humidity that Iowa provides us?
Yeah, what I would recommend there is to avoid doing what a lot of people do in the summer, which is to get out early and ride before it gets hot. That's certainly fine to do some of the time, but you don't want to do it all the time. You do want to do some rides in the heat of the day just to get used to it and figure out how much you need to drink and how to deal with the heat. And, there's all sorts of previous blogs on that topic as well. But nice thing about RAGBRAI is you get a break every 10 miles or so when you hit each new town. And that gives you a chance to find some shade, cool down, get something to drink. So you're not going to necessarily have to be out there for hours on end.
And so, for example, if I'm just making this up, but let's say our average day is 70 miles. So in theory, you'll have 6 or 7 stops where you can find a shade tree or just take a breather off the bike, because Iowa's set up that way with towns everywhere. But can you give us some of your tips on maybe, pacing? Like how fast am I supposed to go, or how much water am I supposed to drink, or, are there resources we can look for?
Well, the rule of thumb I use is, people worry about being able to go that far in a day. But let's use that 70 miles. In July, we're almost at the longest time of the year in terms of day length. So probably 16 hours of daylight divided by 70 miles is not very many miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think I calculated it to be something like 8 miles an hour is what you have to average. That's not very fast. Just about everybody can ride much faster than 8 miles an hour, even with the hills. Now, the hills will slow you down, but again, you'll go faster on the downhills. It doesn't quite average out, but you may feel like you're just crawling going up hills, but that's okay. Once you get there, then you can coast down the other side.
Right.
So in terms of speed, that's really not an issue. It's just the ability to go that distance with several breaks and then do it again the next day and the next day. In terms of water, definitely carry water with you, but again, you'll have a chance at the towns to refill. There's usually water provided, and you can buy other drinks there if you want. But when it's really hot, like in the 90s, you should plan on going through at least one bottle between every town.
Okay. And what about eating?
Yeah, you need to eat, but when you're riding, you don't want to eat too much. So, get up, have something to eat, or maybe you want to start riding for a while before you stop and get something to eat. But try not to eat a big meal at any one stop. Save the big meal for the evening when you get into town. Keep the meal smaller, or maybe just a piece of pie here or there, or a burrito or something, because you don't want all that sitting in your stomach. It's not going to digest very quickly, especially when you're working on hills or riding in the heat. It may even make you nauseous. Eat frequently, but not too much. And then at the end of the day, you can enjoy a good meal to refuel for the next day.
I think that's something that I've noticed over the years. I've been biking a long time, and you can, I guess that's another reason why the training is so important, because I can physically feel, if I go have lunch somewhere and it's, my belly is full, how sluggish you feel after. For me at least, maybe not everyone. But then it also, when consciously make a decision to eat a little something every hour, or whatever the time frame is, just a little, enough to kind of keep you going, I can tell the stamina and the strength that I have versus when I eat one big meal.
Yeah, and again, it could just be something as simple as a banana. That will
Mm-hmm.
give you plenty of calories to get to the next stop. But again, use your training to kind of dial this in. When you go on your longer rides, plan to stop either at a convenience store or a restaurant and try eating. Figure out what works and how much. For example, I don't do well drinking soda when I ride.
Mm.
Upsets my stomach. So you need to figure out what works for you and what doesn't, and how much you can get away with. If you eat a big greasy hamburger, you're going to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can do it, but some people can't.
Yeah, and just, I think there's plenty. I know there are plenty of videos out there about what RAGBRAI looks like, so you can kind of see, what to expect when you come into a town. I mean, if you have, dietary restrictions, you may have to bring your own food. But if you're okay with a smoothie here or a banana here, or like you said, a burrito, all of those are going to be available when you get into towns.
Yeah, and if you have a favorite drink mix or a favorite energy bar that you love, be sure to bring plenty of those, because
Hmm.
there'll be a lot of things available, but your favorite one may not be. And if it's something that you really know works well for you and you enjoy, just make sure you bring it with you.
Hmm.
And I on my longer rides, I'll sometimes bring little containers of drink mix of my own that I just throw into a bottle of water when I refill. So again, figure out what you like, what works.
Hmm. And so you said that you've been posting blogs. Are those available on the ragbri.com website as well?
Yeah, so if you go to the ride tab at the top, and then you'll see training, there'll actually be two tabs. One is the archive, and the other is just my current blogs for the year.
Okay. And then the training plan is also right there?
Yeah, the training plan is February 9th, so it's listed right there under the ride, and then go to training blog.
Okay. So great resources as far as blogs with, training, hill climbing, nutrition, all of it. You've got it all, coach.
Well, one other thing too is the best way to deal with hills is just to be in the best shape you can be in, which means get out and ride as much as you can, even if it's not hills. Just having greater fitness will allow you to withstand the rigors of all the hills and the heat. The best thing you can do is ride a lot. That's my secret tip for RAGBRAI.
Love it. Yep. And I would guess, I mean, you probably have to be honest with yourself. If you cannot maintain 8 miles an hour on a training ride, RAGBRAI is probably not the event for you at this time.
Probably not, although some people will pick and choose and do a few days.
Sure, yeah.
Sometimes there'll be groups, teams of riders, and sometimes they'll take turns driving the SAG vehicle. If that sounds like you might decide to ride a few days and drive drive the RV the rest of the time.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Coach Ertl. We always appreciate when you come on the podcast to kind of calm our nerves and know that we got to put in the effort if we're going to have a successful RAGBRAI.
Well, just think the last 2 years, Matt has put together a course that's had some challenges. 2 years ago, it was a 100-mile day. Everyone was freaking out about that.
That's
as far as I
right.
know, most people did it. Last year was the longest RAGBRAI. Most people did it. If you just break it down into what you have to do each day and what you have to do each hour, it's once you're ready.
I love it. And then the secret, like you said, is to train now so you're ready, and to make sure you get all those contact points where your body touches the bike ready.
And if your bike's not ready, now is the time to work on it.
Oh,
The
yeah.
bike shops are probably already starting to get busy, but they'll be even busier the month before RAGBRAI, so don't wait.
For sure. All right, so go to ragbrai.com and then look for Coach Ertl's training plans, training blogs to help you get ready. And Coach Ertl, we thank you so much for coming on the pod.
You're welcome, and good luck, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Bike podcast. Murph and AP will be back next week. In the meantime, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you would like to contact Murph and AP with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, email them at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. Until next time,
Just go bike!
theme song by Ryan Steer, logo by Suzanne Milosevic, produced by Kathy Murphy, social media by Andrea Parrott, intro by Pumpkin. Until next time, just go bike.